While Mezi, Akash, and Kasumi spent the next day exploring the docks and scouting out the ship being targeted by Raptus, Satara went out and about in the city to pursue her own investigations. First, she visited the temple, bringing a barrel of the Leviathan oil as an offering to the Jinn. After the temple received her tribute and prayers, Satara sought guidance from one of the priests about the Mon and its implications. She described its characteristics and effects, including her own visions, wondering if it could be an artifact of the Jinn. The priest supposed it could be, and conjectured that the draining effect was perhaps a consequence of seeking its boons without the requisite offering, though there was not much he could say for certain without examining the object. While he was disappointed to learn the item was not currently in her possession, she offered to retrieve it. When Satara visited Mufuz's abode, however, there was no answer. After multiple attempts, she visited the shop on the upper floor to speak to the owner, a clothier by the name of Khurshid bin Yosef Karim. While the very fashionably dressed man did not know of the sage's whereabouts, Khurshid informed her that Mufuz rented the floor below from him, and while he thought the sage a bit odd and hermetic, he was usually prompt with the rent. After making a few purchases, she decided to check back again later to see if she could catch the sage at home. Whilst out carousing, Satara heard troubling tales of conscription and reports that a couple of ships had not made it back to port from abroad. Rumors had it that Taotoans might have been causing trouble in the shipping lanes, driving sailors closer to the pirate isles. Stopping by Mufuz's shop once more on her way back to the docks, Satara's knocks were once again met only with silence.
Meanwhile, Mezi sought out Raptus's group to deliver a message. When Ileana caught up to her, Mezi declared that the party was formulating a plan but would only speak of it to Raptus. Ileana informed Mezi that she could speak with Raptus at a local shrine once the party had a plan to present. After this tense exchange, Ileana dismissed Mezi with a slight. Mezi confronted her, and the two seemed close to blows before she dismissed Ileana in kind and walked away. Mezi returned to the dockside bar where the party was plotting. Finally, they decided on setting a trap for the crew of Burning Brand to get them imprisoned and therefore out of the way of Raptus and his plans. Upon traveling to the shrine to meet with Raptus, Kasumi and Akash spotted movement on a nearby rooftop. Kasumi quickly scaled the building, reaching the top just in time to see a figure dropping off the other side. Darting across the roof, Kasumi did not see anyone unusual in the street traffic below. Raptus soon arrived, and the party shared their plan to offer Mezi as bait for the ship's marines in order to get them arrested for kidnapping. He agreed to give them a week to deal with the ship before he would take action. Informing the crew that they could leave a message for him at the Broken Beak, Raptus took his leave, and the crew set about preparing their work against Burning Brand. Meeting for breakfast the next morning, the party discussed plans to lure out the Marines of Burning Brand. Akash, Kasumi, and Satara then spent most of the day checking out the docks and scouting possible locations for their trap. Akash sought out his brother for advice and was directed to the Smoking Cloud, a tavern which doubled as an incense shop. It seemed Tabari disliked the owner, one Hassan bin Nima Attar, and would have liked nothing more than to see the man's livelihood damaged. Meanwhile, Satara found two other prime locations, the Dented Pot restaurant and the Brackwater Inn. Discussing their options the following morning, Akash suggested Mezi rent a room at the Smoking Cloud to lure the Marines into making a scene there, promising a sympathetic guard presence in the area. His comment that the owner of the Smoking Cloud deserved the commotion, though he admitted to never having met the man himself, raised eyebrows amongst some of his companions, though, in the end, they decided his recommended location.
With the matter of the trap settled, the party decided to retrieve the Mon. Once again, there was no answer at the door, and Satara went above his shop to inquire with his landlord. Finding it odd that Mufuz was still not answering, Khurshid attempted to open the sage's residence, only to find that his key no longer worked. Given the circumstances, Kasumi stepped forward to offer his assistance. Satara and Mezi exchanged a quick glance as Kasumi skillfully worked the lock until it unlatched. though Kasumi noted it was sturdier than one would expect for a sage's hut. Entering, the group saw no trace of the sage, though they did find melted candle wax and spilled ink on his desk. Satara noticed that it appeared the spill had settled around something, perhaps a book. Kasumi's first thought was that the house had been broken into, but upon further investigation it seemed that may not be the case, as they found no signs of forced entry. Akash and Kasumi noticed several tomes and objects were also missing from the shelves of the man's library, from sections focused on various religions and mythologies. With no hints as to the whereabouts of the sage or the mob, the landlord Khurshid stated he would keep the place intact for the time being and alert the crew if Mufuz returned. If not, he would offer some of the sage's belongings as recompense for their lost property. Akash and Kasumi were mortified that they had not only lost the Mon, but they hadn't thought to place any lookouts or take precautions to safeguard this most precious artifact. Deciding to speak with the neighbors in case anyone had seen something odd, the party met a pair of young men across the street, who, though they appeared very stoned, indicated that they had seen Mufuz carried out of his shop by two men late on the night of the 14th. Believing Mufuz to have been drunk and deep in their own gluttonies themselves, their vague recounting of the incident annoyed some of the members of the party, though their information seemed mostly consistent. Relaying this news to Khurshid, the man put little stock in the stories of the two young men, Hisham and Hamid as they were known, though he did warn the captain that, if they were correct, Satara should take care lest she find herself mixed up with less than savory people. If only he knew the company Satara was already keeping. Finding no other leads, Akash and Kasumi sought out their own contacts to put the word out about Mufuz's disappearance, while Satara continued to spread the word about Mezi staying at the Smoking Cloud. After a couple of days' reconnaissance to try to ascertain the number of soldiers that his party might be up against, Kasumi bore witness to a crewman falling asleep on duty. When his superior caught him nodding off, he lifted the man bodily, throwing him overboard into the harbor. Berating the soldier as he hefted himself up, his superior cuffed him across the face with a heavy knotted cord, knocking him back into the water. Climbing once more back onto the deck, the sopping soldier received one last slap from the officer before resuming his position at attention. After this display, Kasumi felt a twinge of sympathy for the soldier, especially knowing what he and the crew had planned for them.
Meanwhile, as the captain was tailing Mezi through the Grand Bazaar to keep an eye on her, Satara caught sight of a Tatuan man attempting to make a deal with an Ashib merchant for a shipment of grain. Surmising he was Burning Brand's merchant captain, she debated momentarily whether or not to disrupt the deal and perhaps stall their departure. After silently watching their negotiations, Satara returned to the crew, realizing they must act soon.
That evening, as Mezi dined at the Smoking Cloud, a cloaked figure bought Mezi drinks at the bar, but kept their distance, remaining anonymous. Mezi continued to subtly advertise her presence the following day, while Satara and Kasumi tracked the crew of Burning Brand. Reaching out through his network of Brotherhood contacts, Akash learned that no one had spotted Mufuz anywhere around the city, and that he indeed seemed to have gone missing. At the Smoking Cloud, Mezi spotted the mysterious figure who had been buying her drinks. Once they had left, she tailed her benefactor, turning a corner to find an empty alleyway. As the party made their way around to the other end of the alley, Akash spotted a figure leaning against the entrance. Akash walked past the man, taking up a seat in the alley and pulling out his pipe. After a brief conversation, the man asked Akash to bring him some of his pipe weed in exchange for the substances he had to offer. Akash returned to the others, fairly certain this dealer was not their man, and the party returned to the inn to retire. The next evening, the party took up their positions in the Smoking Cloud. Over the course of the evening, they spotted 5 very suspicious, cloaked Taotoan men enter, and one with a black eye approached Mezi with an offer of drinks. Kasumi, who was making small talk with 2 Marines at the bar, recognized the bruised man as a soldier he had seen disciplined by his commander. Plying her with numerous drinks, the man tried to get Mezi to leave the bar with him. After deferring as long as she could, she excused herself upstairs to change. The rest of the party watched on edge as the man followed, with 2 Marines from the common tables close behind. Mezi readied herself in her room, but when she opened the door to leave, she found herself rushed by all 3 men. What followed next was a comedy of errors. As Mezi struggled with the Marines in her room, Satara and Akash stormed upstairs. The captain barged in first, distracting the bruised man holding a knife to Mezi long enough for her to boot him out the door and into Akash. Making quite the show of being attacked, Akash allowed himself to be wounded in exchange before buffeting the man down the hallway with a blast of wind. With the aid of her companions, the tide turned on the other 2 soldiers, and Mezi demanded their surrender.
Meanwhile, downstairs, Kasumi's distraction of the Taotoans at the bar took a hard turn into absurdity, as his new drinking buddies attempted to push past him at the sound of the commotion upstairs. Kasumi comedically splashed a potent drink in the face of the nearest one, blinding him. Kasumi rushed after his next victim, who was making for the door, shouting empty apologies behind him. In his affected drunken stupor, Kasumi snatched the man's sword from its sheath and flung it across the room, striking one of the other patrons with it, after which Kasumi of course berated the poor marine for so clumsily losing hold of his blade. As the patrons scrambled away from the blinded man who was wildly swinging, Kasumi simply moved out of the path of his now swordless companion, accidentally tripping the man and toppling him over a table. Making his exit, Kasumi rushed dramatically up the street, spouting the terrors of the Taotoan menace to alert the city guard. Having gained their attention, he strolled back, feeling rather satisfied with himself, as the guards made their way towards the smoking cloud.
However, a trio of Taotoans outside entered the bar behind Kasumi, having been alerted by the commotion at the door. As they rushed upstairs, Akash attempted to blow them back downstairs, only to have his blast sliced effortlessly in half by their leader. With the arrival of the Taotoan commander, the fight rapidly descended into chaos. One of the Marines forced Akash out of the room, and the others held him at sword point while the commander engaged Satara, who had positioned herself squarely between him and his quarry. Mezi was struggling with one of the Marines at the window when suddenly a familiar hand smashed out the panes and yanked the man out onto the roof. Satara covered her as Mezi followed out the window, where she saw the Marine lose his balance, nearly sliding off the roof head first until Kasumi grabbed his foot. Calling out for Mezi to help, they managed to pull the soldier, despite his protests, back up to safety. As Satara made her escape with a daring backwards dive out the window, sticking the landing in a lunge and using her blades to slow her descent to the edge of the roof, the guards finally arrived, clashing with the Marines as they attempted to pursue. After a tense standoff, the Marines were arrested. Between the party's statements, their status as a crew for the illustrious shipwright Aleem, Akash's reputation as a successful local businessman, and protests from the regulars of the inn concerning the Taotoan's behavior, the town guard found sufficient cause to lead the Marine squad away in chains. Just as the party took a deep breath and began to congratulate themselves on their success, a slow clap echoed from a nearby alleyway. Stepping into view, Raptus revealed himself, apparently amused at the party's skirmish with the Marines. While he was agreeable to giving them more time to acquire Burning Brand's cargo, Raptus was unwilling to let the issue end with the Marines' arrest. Heading to the shipyard, the party woke Diallo to have him tend to their wounds. Kasumi related how he had distracted the Marines downstairs, while the others engaged the Marines in battle upstairs. Amazed at their brazen confrontation, Diallo again asked that the party be careful in dealing with the Taotoans and Raptus, before insisting upon them getting a good night's rest.
After breakfast, the crew went to see Aleem at his shipyard. They explained that the party had gotten into a scrap the previous night, fending off Tatoan soldiers seeking the bounty on Mezi, and she relayed the events that had led to her fugitive status. Sympathetic to her honorable plight, Aleem agreed to support the party. Since being an employee of a citizen afforded Mezi protection and Aleem restitution under a Sheeb law, he agreed to speak with the city guard about seizing the Marine's cargo. After debating what to do about Burning Brand's captain and the ship itself, the crew found themselves curious as to the nature of the crimes the Marines firmly believed Mezi to be guilty of. Deciding to ask the Marines directly, the crew went to the jail where they were incarcerated. Each of them approaching a different cell, they interrogated the soldiers about the reason for their presence in Rakosis and their stance on Mezi's crimes. Sitara attempted to speak with the Marine who had been punished by his commander and put up to baiting Mezi. However, her compassionate manner was met only with stubborn reticence.
Akash approached the man Kasumi had blinded with his drink in the bar. After an exchange, in which Akash attempted to pass himself off as a potential ally in hopes of learning more information, the man, convinced that Akash could be bought, suggested that he take Mezi to Burning Brand's captain in exchange for a reward.
Mezi confronted the Marine commander about the accusations brought against her. He accused her of colluding with the rebels of Al-Kira and leading the 2 men under her command into an ambush. Mezi admitted that she had helped a wanted man escape, but indignantly denied killing anyone. The commander seemed convinced of Mezi's guilt, taking her admission of assisting a wanted fugitive as confirmation of her working with the rebels.
Kasumi talked to the man who had been badly injured during the fight, whom they had kept from falling off the roof. He attempted to convince the man that Mezi was not capable of committing the crime they had accused her of, citing the fact Mezi had risked capture to save his life, not exactly the behavior of a traitor and a murderer. While the injured man's cellmate soundly defied him, Kasumi could see the seeds of doubt had been planted.
Generally frustrated, the crew left the jail to consider their options against their remaining enemies. After deciding to suggest an alternate course of action, they went to meet once more with Raptus. Asserting that unifying a council of captains against the Tatoan threat would be more beneficial than making a show of setting Burning Brand alight in the harbor, Sitara proposed instead that Raptus commandeer the ship and take it to the Free Isles. Though he seemed initially unconvinced, some of the party heard whispers coming from behind the crates near Raptus. Eventually, he agreed to hijack the ship and give the crew a chance to defect, but declined the party's offer of assistance. Amongst Raptus's people, emotions seemed mixed, with Ileana threatening that if the plan failed, Mezi would regret it.